So we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Aloni, and I'm with Schneps Media. Schneps Media is the largest local media company, and we publish over 70 newspapers, magazines, websites, webinars, podcasts, and events throughout Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, the Bronx, Westchester, Long Island, and Philadelphia. Today, it's my real pleasure to bring to you this webinar, 9 Steps to Avoid Renovation Regret, and an amazing expert, Koda Wang. Welcome, Koda.
Thank you very much.
I want to tell you a little bit about Koda. He is the co-founder of Block Renovation, which is a platform that helps homeowners and contractors renovate better together. Prior to Block, Koda helped build Rent the Runway as its chief customer officer and the Huffington Post as its chief operating officer. Certainly someone with tremendous experience. Welcome, Koda. Can you walk us through the 9 steps to avoid renovation regret?
Yeah, certainly. And thank you for having me today. I'm saying hello from a little apartment here in Brooklyn, where we've been hunkered down for the past few months. I'm happy to be representing Block today and talking folks through these 9 steps.
Fantastic. I know it's so important. Renovations are booming. Whether it's do it yourself or hiring people. And I know that so many people are busy doing this kind of work. So this is such an important conversation to have. Thank you for giving us this advice.
Certainly. Should we get started or?
I said, absolutely. Let's get started. Let's jump right in. I know everyone's eager to know.
I'm going to share my screen and let me know if everyone can see it.
This looks good.
Good?
Good.
All right, cool. So we hope to walk folks through some of the some tips that we have gathered based on our experience as a company doing hundreds of bathroom and kitchen renovations in the New York area. So Block Renovation, as Elizabeth mentioned earlier, is a renovation platform. We bring together homeowners with contractors, designers, and materials to make the process of doing a renovation better and simpler for all parties involved. We operate in the New York area, so the 5 boroughs in the city, down on through Long Island, up to Westchester, and in northern Jersey, and we do hundreds of renovations. So we've seen sort of all sorts of shapes and sizes of bathrooms and kitchens and situations of these buildings.
Nothing's going to throw you off. You've seen it all.
Well, I don't want to say that just yet, but maybe there will still be surprises for us yet. You never know. But we've certainly seen a lot. So the first one is, so we got 9 steps. The first one is really from the very beginning when you're starting your renovation. Level set expectations. I think HGTV has made renovation seem a little too easy. A 30-minute episode or 60-minute episode, like it seems like you set it out, you design it, and you build it, and it's done overnight almost. But in reality, renovations are pretty hard. These horror stories come from somewhere, and I think it's really important for folks to level set their expectations and do some research on how long it takes, how much it's going to cost, what it's going to ultimately look like before they set down on this journey.
That's such a good point. I mean, I had some work done recently and I figured, I can do the floor. I'll just throw it down. 1, 2, 3. And I started seeing it and I was like, I can't do that. No way.
Totally. One of the other things is that, sorry, Elizabeth, are you?
I was going to say, what makes renovating in New York so different?
Yeah, it's a good question. New York is different for a couple of reasons. One is that especially if you live in the city, but even if you don't live in the city, a lot of folks live in condos and co-ops. And when you're dealing with condo and co-op buildings, there's just a lot of factors that you have to consider when you don't live in your own house. You have to go through building approval processes. There's elevator limitations for the building. There are hours of restrictions for when construction crews can operate. And there are also limitations on making sure your neighbors are good with it, or getting building approval. So there's just like more complexities there. The lack of space is also another one of them. So unlike a situation where you can just load up things into your load up materials onto your driveway or in your garage, you don't really have that if you're living in a building, and you've got to find your own space inside your apartment to stage all the materials and stage the tools. So it's just more space constrained, and it's a additional complexity that you and the contractor have to work out. And then finally, it's the cost. So as everyone may have seen, there is a lot of renovation activity going on, and even more so during COVID, which means the supply of good contractors is lower than it usually is, and which means the rates are typically higher than they usually are. So that's just something to be prepared for, is that renovations may cost more nowadays than before. And given the general labor shortage, that's going to be all the more acute.
Wow. What about how long it takes for renovations? First of all, how long do they typically take, but also has that slowed down because of this large demand you're talking about?
Yeah, it's a good question. How long it takes is highly dependent on a few things. If you're, for example, you typically start with a planning and design phase. And that planning and design phase can take anywhere from a month to 4 or 5 months. It really depends on how determined someone is to move the ball forward. Because as you know, you could be looking at magazines and dreaming of your new space for months before actually pulling the trigger and deciding to go forward with it. The other component is building approvals. So if you're a single family home, there's not really any building approvals. You can just start, right? But if you're living in a condo or co-op, it really depends on your buildings board or property management company. And those approvals can take a matter of days. We've seen it, approvals literally come in 2 hours, but we've also seen buildings take 2-3 months to approve.
Wow.
And sometimes it's because they have a limitation on how many renovations can happen at any given time in that building. And sometimes because it's just bureaucracy and it takes them a long time. So that's a huge variable. And finally, the construction phase, right? Let's say you've finished design, finished building approvals, you've purchased all the materials, and then you want to start the construction phase. That can take quite a range of time. I mean, you can get it done for a bathroom, let's say, as quickly as 1 month, but those horror stories of renovations taking a year come from somewhere. And it's because there are cases where these renovations really drag out for months and months and months and months. And that really depends on, one, how experienced the person is at renovating, and they're able to manage the renovation and be able to be on the lookout for some of these potholes along the way. And second is, how good is your renovation partner? So are you working with a great designer, a great logistics partner, and a great contractor to be able to get it done? And that's the difference between 1 month versus a year.
Wow, that's a huge difference. So really setting up the right team and making sure you're finding the right team is so critical in managing this time constraint.
Totally.
Wow. Okay, thank you. So we really need to make sure our expectations are set. And would you recommend that someone gets approval? Like, let's say they're in a co-op. Would you recommend they get approval before starting anything? Or do you really have to bring the team together first and then get approval?
It's
How
a
do you
great question.
recommend that?
No, it's a great question, Elizabeth. Typically, the approval process requires you to have at least a high level point of view of what you're going to be doing. So the buildings typically ask, it's very common, they'll ask for a scope of work. And sometimes they ask for a design intent drawing, so a DID. And often they will ask for a copy of the contractor's license and insurance. So if you don't have those things together, there's a good chance that your building won't even approve your work in the first place. Usually you can't just go to them and say, hey, I want to do a renovation of some sort, just approve it and I'll figure it out afterward. You got to have some of your homework done in advance so that you have a good shot at getting approved.
Well, that's a very helpful thing to know. Thank you.
No.
So what's our next step? What step? I love hearing each one.
Yeah, so set a realistic budget. We've done surveys before. As a renovation platform, we help people with their renovation experiences, almost like renovation coaches for folks. And we've done surveys and we've asked folks, hey, well, how much do you think a renovation costs? And you get responses ranging from, I think it should cost $5,000 for a bathroom or kitchen, to I think it should cost $100,000 for a bathroom and kitchen. And the reality is, it kind of depends what you're doing. So yes, you could spend $5,000 if you're just doing a very small light touch up. You swap out a vanity, or you swap out your lights, or maybe you replace a faucet or a toilet. And then yes, you could also invest really $50,000 if you want to do the works, do everything that you've wanted, with heated floors and full gut of your bathroom and whatnot. So just to give you a little bit of calibration, right? Remodeling Magazine has been in the business for 30 something years. They do a annual benchmark of how much renovations cost. The average bathroom remodel in New York, the New York area, is 29,000.
Wow.
And this is 2019 data. So the average bathroom remodel, people invest 29,000.
Mhm.
But for an upscale one, you can, the sky's the limit. And their benchmark is 88,000 for an truly upscale bathroom. And then looking at a kitchen, the average major kitchen remodel, and a major kitchen remodel is something in which you replace everything the eye can see: cabinetry, countertops, flooring, plumbing, appliances, lighting, etc. The average major kitchen remodel is 84,000 in the New York area, given the current labor rates.
Wow.
A minor one, in which you're replacing only a subset of the kitchen, comes out at 29,000. And an upscale one can be over 100,000. So the ranges can vary quite a bit depending on what you're doing, what is the quality of the labor, and what is the quality of the materials.
So where does the money go? I mean, you just mentioned some key things for sure, but wow.
Yeah. So in a bathroom renovation, most of the money will be invested in the labor side. So the labor will typically be at least 2/3, if not 3/4
Okay.
of a total amount. And whereas in a kitchen renovation, labor and materials are typically more half and half. So in a kitchen renovation, the materials actually take up a bigger proportion, because you're buying cabinetry, you're buying countertops, you're buying appliances, and the range for these materials can vary a ton, right? You can get a GE appliance set, like a fridge and a stove and a microwave and a basic appliance set for GE for like $1,000 or $2,000. But you can also go, get something like Wolf Sub-Zero or Viking set, and that'll put you back 15,000 or 20,000. So that's just appliances, and there's such a huge range. So this is where, doing a little bit of research in advance will help you calibrate what the right budget for your renovation is.
And I think this is very important for people to know, to really have a realistic understanding of what things cost and where the money goes. Are there things that homeowners can do that will reduce costs? Are there choices or other things they could do for that?
That is a great segue into the next one that we had. I don't know if you saw this, but this is kind of a natural question people ask. It's like, oh, it ranges so much. What's worth investing in, what's not investing in? So a couple pointers here. One is, don't move plumbing unless you really need to. So you might think that, like, hey, I'm going to move the toilet 3 inches this way or 5 inches that way, or move the sink a few inches here, left or right, won't make a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. So we're talking thousands of dollars potentially in plumbing costs if you move the location of your fixtures. And so usually we say, hey, look, if you're really trying to get more bang for the buck, it's probably not worth shifting your plumbing, shifting your shower from here to here or your toilet from here to here. It's probably not worth it. And so that's just like a word to the wise. Another one is saving money on tile. So tile can also be quite expensive. You can get pretty cheap, subway tile from Home Depot for a couple bucks a square foot, but you can also get super fancy tile for like 30, 40, 50, 60 a square foot. And that's a huge range, right? So we advise you, it's not necessarily worth it to go for the fanciest tile that's like 30, 40, 50 a square foot. Usually you can get very good quality porcelain tile or very good quality marble tile, Carrara, for example, in the single digits or in the teens per square foot. But really going above that may not be worth it. On top of that, it may not be worth it to put tile everywhere. So some people we see like kind of go for the overkill. They're tiling all four walls of their bathroom. That may not be necessary. From a design perspective, often it looks better to just tile the wet walls. So the walls that are the perimeter of the shower or tub, the wall along the your vanity or your toilet, and then just have drywall and paint on the other ones, and maybe you can have a contrast there as well. So that's typically another way to save.
Great. And you mentioned also the difference of appliances, what kind of appliances you select. So you probably on each piece that you're doing, there's the way to buy the highest of high or the lower end or somewhere in the middle to be able to affect that.
Yeah. And I saw a question coming in from Sammy Levy. If someone doesn't have a huge budget but wants to make a biggest impact on their bathroom, what do you suggest? That I can answer that in the inverse way, which is the most expensive parts of doing your bathroom renovation will be replacing tile, because you have to do demolition on all the walls, and then put up new walls and put up new tile. And the other biggest thing that'll make an impact on the budget is plumbing, particularly the tub or shower. So if you're replacing a tub, it's a big cost. You're replacing your shower, that's a big cost. Both are in the thousands, not in the hundreds. So if you want to save money and make a big impact, it's really in the tiling and in the plumbing where the biggest cost drivers are. Replacing a vanity, not expensive. Replacing lighting, not expensive. Fresh coat of paint, not expensive. But it's really in the plumbing and the tiling.
Good to know. We also had a question from Terry who wanted to know, is it better with materials to have the contractor buy them or go direct to manufacturers?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's like the whole procurement question of how should I run procurement. It kind of depends on how capable you feel in running that process. So when you're doing procurement, we'll get to that more in a little bit, but for a typical bathroom, you're going to be looking at somewhere between 50 to 70 individual items that go into that bathroom. 50 to 70 individual items.
Wow.
So we're talking about like even a shower body system. You're talking about multiple valves. You're talking about the shower head, the faucet, the tub spout, like the trim, the knot. Like each of these is an individual item. You're going to have you need to buy grout. You need to buy caulking. You need to buy all these little things. Have rope hooks and towel bars. So there are lots of details that people sort of kind of don't realize when they first think about, oh, what do I need to buy for a bathroom? Maybe a tub, a toilet, a sink, vanity, lights, and they think it's like 7 or 8 objects, but it's actually 50 or 60 or potentially 70 depending how complex your renovation is. So do you feel capable in doing that? And if you do feel capable in managing the procurement of all that, basically you get a spreadsheet, which is your material schedule, and then check off each item as it arrives and make sure they're all there. Then by all means go for it. But just to be totally transparent, it is not an easy thing to do. You can also have your contractor do it. Totally plausible. I would recommend finding a partner that has a warehouse where these items can be staged so that they can be checked off as they're arrived. And if your contractor doesn't seem capable in doing that, it might be messier for them to do it. The reason being, like if you have a warehouse, as all these shipments arrive, and you might get like 10, 12 shipments of 15 shipments of all these different items, you want someone to be there to say, hey, this has arrived, check the box, check the box, check the box. You don't want to get to the point where at the last mile of your renovation, you find out, like this valve was missing. And now we have to go get this valve. But this valve now has a 3-week turnaround time. So you've got to put the whole project on pause to go wait for to buy the valve and then wait for the valve to arrive so you can put the valve in and then continue all the rest of the work. So any one item can cause a pretty significant delay to your project. And you've got to be really diligent if you're going to be the one to purchase the materials, or if your contractor is the one to purchase the materials, they've got to be super diligent about it so as to not create delays in the project. This is often why many projects go on for months, because you'll get to a certain point, you'll need a certain material, you'll find that you don't have it, got to go purchase it, takes a few weeks, work continues. A week later, you find out another thing, you got things missing, got to buy it. It arrives a few weeks later, work continues. And it's this very stop and start kind of phenomenon.
That's fantastic advice. So tell us, what's step 6?
Gather your inspiration, stick with it. So this is where we see a lot of people hemming and hawing on what they actually want to do. And sometimes it's hard to get your partner or your spouse aligned in what you want to do. So this is a moment to be decisive early on. It's like, hey, this is the aesthetic we're going for. This is the kind of look we're going for, and then run with it, because this can go on for months if you're not decisive.
What resources would you recommend to help people make those decisions?
Yeah, so very common places people go are looking at places like Pinterest, and there's tons of inspiration on Pinterest. Some websites that are pretty popular are like Apartment Therapy, The Spruce, Remodelista. Those 3 I just named are pretty practical. They have like tips on how to save money, and here's good design bang for your buck. I think more aspirational ones like Architecture Digest, they're beautiful, but just go in there with the knowledge that those bathrooms or kitchens that you're seeing in Arch Digest are like $100,000 or $200,000. So they're beautiful, but they may not be worthwhile investments or attainable investments. So just want to be totally open about that fact.
That's good to know. You don't want to set your heart on a faucet that costs 20 grand if you weren't planning that. So that's
Totally.
good.
It's like fashion magazines. Like they're beautiful, but they may not be the most affordable options when you actually look at the price tag.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's good advice. So what's next? Step 5.
So know what it's going to look like. This is related to the previous point, in which it's easy to put together a bunch of inspiration. You have sort of like a mood board for yourself, but how do you actually know what it all looks like when it comes together? This is where having some rendering software is useful. And typically, if you work with the designer will put together a render in software like SketchUp or Revit or Rhino. It's very common software used with designers. In the block context, we pair you with the designer, and you get to choose from a few templates, so you kind of know what it's going to look like in advance, and you can customize those templates, kind of like you customize a car, and then you get a 3D render of what it looks like coming out of it. That's something we'd recommend, even if you don't work with a designer you find through Block, but just if you work with a designer, knowing what it's going to look like, it's pretty critical. Because once you do demolition and once you start investing the thousands of dollars into it, it's kind of hard to go back. And typically there aren't returns for a renovation. So it's important to have that known in advance.
That makes a really big difference. I think a lot of people, it's very hard to just imagine in your mind. So to have a rendering like this, it really makes it clear about whether or not it's what you're looking for.
Yeah, totally.
Terrific.
Well, and this is also an area where like a designer could potentially help, because there's some small details that you never expect. For example, one thing that's kind of like thing that we see occasionally when people do design themselves is that they'll choose a small detail. They don't realize how it intersects with other choices. So they'll do like a gooseneck faucet, and then there will be a medicine cabinet behind it, and it's in their bathroom. But they forget to see that when the medicine cabinet opens, it hits the faucet, and they don't measure the height of the faucet to make sure it doesn't collide with the medicine cabinet. So these are just small details to make sure like you can independently like this faucet and you can also like this medicine cabinet, but you got to make sure the measurements work out so that when the medicine cabinet opens, it doesn't hit the faucet.
That's such a good point. I learned the hard way also about where to put light, where you turn on lights and turn off lights, how you can make a mistake on that. So it really is very important to not only know what it's going to look like, but also work with somebody who can tell you what you need to think about that honestly, as a homeowner, you just wouldn't know.
Yeah, very much so.
So know what it's going to look like. Make sure that you're working with someone that can show you that.
Yeah, exactly. Getting a material schedule is relates to the point we talked about earlier, which is hey, you kind of need if you're going to do a renovation, you kind of need a recipe for that renovation. And that recipe is like for a bathroom, 50, 60, 70 items. For kitchens, similarly, it's going to be quite a few items in that schedule. So you want to almost make a spreadsheet for yourself and say, hey, do I have this? Do I have this? And even small things like, do I have a light switch? Right? that you, if you're going to be renovating, you still need a new light switch. And these small details sometimes people may miss. So get your recipe written down in advance and make sure you have each of the ingredients. And then when you do the procurement, so in whether you do it yourself or you have your contractor do it, in Block's case, we actually do procurement on behalf of our clients. So we have a warehouse and we have everything shipped there and we check off all the boxes. But you could do this yourself as well if you want to do it. Just make sure as stuff arrives, you check it off, it's arrived. It's also recommended that you inspect the item itself to make sure it is not missing or it is not broken. These things get shipped across the country all the time. And very often you're going to get broken tiles, you're going to get broken vanities. I saw some guys the other day literally tossing vanities out of the back of a van. And I'm like, okay, that
Oh my gosh.
definitely needs an inspection before it goes into someone's home. So you want to make sure that the stuff that you get, even if it arrives, is in the right condition so that you don't get a surprise a few weeks later when you open the box to install your light and you realize your light fixture has been cracked.
That's a critical area, I think, that most people need help. I mean, when you said a bathroom is 50 things that you need to have, check, make sure it's not broken. And the point that you made that it really affects the renovation schedule so often that really is an area where I think most people would really want someone else to be able to manage that for them. So
Totally. I think it's totally underrated. I mean, we spend a lot of time at Block nailing this process because we find that it's sort of a low key under the radar thing that happens because not as sexy as doing the design or as visible as doing the construction, but it has a tremendous impact on project timelines and tremendous impact on the cost of a project.
it's the everything, right? I mean, if you don't have all the materials you need, they're broken, they're late, and even just to know what you need, like you mentioned some of those things for the faucets and whatnot. I mean, these things are foreign to most people.
Yeah. Um, there's a question about what software, like SketchUp is a free software you can use, and a lot of people teach themselves how to use use SketchUp. Uh, More hardcore designers will use things like Revit and Rhino, but software is sort of like a layman's tool that everyone can learn and download for free.
And I will, with some of the questions that are coming in, I'm going to ask you them. So
Oh,
anyone
great.
asking questions, don't worry. We are going to get to your questions. So what's step 3?
Step 3.
You have a lot of questions about that. Contractor.
Vet your contractor. That is probably the most critical component of or critical decision you're going to make in your renovation is who you're going to be partnering with. And vetting your contractor is something that a lot of people don't necessarily feel well equipped to do. Ideally, you make sure they have some basics. So they need to be licensed for sure, non-negotiable. They need to have insurance. Typically, it's a general liability insurance, and a very typical policy is a 1 and 2 policy or $1 million per incident and $2 million aggregate policy. So you want to make sure they're licensed and insured. But you also want to make sure you check some of their references and check some of their previous work. Do they have examples of some of their previous work and make sure they've actually done bathrooms and kitchens? The word general contractor is it's so revealing because they will do generally anything. And so you want to talk to the contractor and understand, okay, how many bathrooms and kitchens have you actually done? Because this is pretty complicated. I'm going to invest tens of thousands of dollars. So I want to make sure that it's not like you're a general contractor that does in the occasional bathroom a couple times a year, but you're actually doing this over and over and over again. You have a lot of experience in doing this, because you don't want to make a bet on somebody who's only doing the bathrooms and kitchens occasionally, but most of the time they're doing like flooring or roofing or porches or decks or painting or carpentry. Like their general contractor can do a lot of different things. So you want to vet the contractor. And finally, you kind of, if you have if you're sort of handy, you're kind of handy yourself and you have an eye for this, it would be good to talk to them about different standards they have for their workmanship. So what kind of waterproofing do you use? Do you use the cheap RedGuard stuff, or are you using Laticrete Hydroban? How do you typically deal with walls that are not plumb, or floors that are not level? Are you pouring new concrete? Are you sistering the joists that are needed? Or are you just kind of, leaving the walls as they are? These are types of questions that we have contractors pass through when we do our vetting process at Block. So we help, as we're kind of like renovation coaches for homeowners, and we help curate contractors for them, and we take them through this vetting process. And these are very common questions that we ask. We also, if you're not working with a partner like Block to help you on that, we also recommend that you ask questions like that, verify things like licenses, verify things like insurance, and finally, ask if they carry a workmanship warranty. Everyone's sort of heard of the fly-by-night contractors that, they do some work for you, and then you don't hear from them again, and then you're like, something goes wrong, and you have no means of recourse. Let's say there's a leak and you don't know what to do. Any legitimate contractor will have a workmanship warranty, and typically that warranty can be 6 months or 12 months or some period of time, and saying, hey, if anything goes wrong because of the construction/renovation work that I did, I'll come back and fix it. So any legitimate contractor will carry a workmanship warranty for their work.
That's really very important. So you want to make sure that they have experience. You want to make sure they have insurance, and you want to make sure that they're going to stand behind their work with a warranty.
That's right.
And how do people know if they're reliable? I mean, how do you, it's so difficult, because I think, like you said, there are so many people that'll say they're general contractors, or, maybe put out an ad somewhere. How do you pick the right person?
Yeah, it's
That's
gotta be
hard,
your,
right?
yeah, it's hard. It's not easy. Part of the reason that we started this company in the first place is to help people vet their contractors. And um, referrals are often a way that to get more confidence around it. If your friend or your neighbors have worked with a contractor, that's usually a good and had good experiences. It's usually a good indicator. In the Block context, we work with contractors on a multi-project basis. So instead of working, you hire a contractor for one project, we work with a contractor across 40 or 50 projects over the course of this year. So it's not one project on the line, but 49 other projects that they have on the line. So they're much more incentivized to do right by the customer, because otherwise all that rest of the demand goes away. I think a lot of contractors who don't have that special arrangement that they have through Block, and they're still motivated by getting referral work. And so if you're hearing about a contractor through a friend or through a colleague, that's also a good way. But it's not easy. It is really not easy. It's not like there's a Amazon for contractors where you know exactly what you're going to get, how much it's going to cost, and what it's going to look like. Unfortunately, you're going to have to do a lot of your own vetting, or you work with a partner that helps you with the vetting.
So someone just asked, Trisha, that your company takes care of all these services in terms of vetting.
So we're a renovation platform. We help you bring together all the components. Kind of think of it as like a renovation advisor or a renovation coach. We match you with a designer. We actually do the procurement on behalf of our clients. So we have a warehouse where we send everything, so you don't have to do this Excel spreadsheet with all the checklists and receiving and opening all the boxes. And also we have a very tight focused network of contractors that we work with. So we accept only one out of every 15 contractors who apply to be a block contractor. And it's pretty
Wow.
selective. It's kind of like the Harvard for contractors. They've got to pass all of our tests for waterproofing and carpentry and plumbing and blah, blah, blah. And also, obviously, they're licensed in insurance and carry a workmanship warranty. And if you don't make the cut, you're cut from the program. So we help homeowners with that, and we know that it's very difficult, which is part of the reason that we assist them with the vetting process at the end of the day. And we also help with scoping the project. So a lot of people have problem figuring out, hey, I got a bid for this and I get a bid for this. This one's 19,000, this one's 16,000, but they have different words on the pages. So I'm not really sure, is this an apples to apples comparison or not? And so what we do is we have a universal scope that says, hey, here's a apples to apples comparison. Everything here is a specific determined scope. Different contractors, all these different contractors in our network are going to do the identical work for that price given, as opposed to not having an apples to apples comparison. So that's where a lot of change orders sometimes come your way. Is there's not an apples to apples comparison, and one person will bid low and have a hidden scope of work, and as a result, you're going to get change ordered for, oh, you got 3,000 for this or 5,000 for this, and you're like, wait, I didn't know what I didn't know. So I didn't know that I had to ask for this until it actually came up. So we try to keep contractors honest with a robust scope of work so that you have an apples to apples comparison.
Seems like you take a lot of the anxiety out of the process by offering these type of things, because like Lewis is asking, how do you know the contractor is telling you the truth about the questions that you ask? So having the confidence that these are people that have been vetted and that they tell the truth. And also it kind of puts you in a position where you're like a developer, because you deal with so many projects that these contractors are going to be more reliable, which is really valuable.
Yeah, there's very little replacement for having worked with someone before. So if someone, when we put a contractor in front of someone, it's not a speculation of, oh, I wonder how their waterproofing is. It's, hey, this contractor's done 24 other projects for our clients and for their clients using the block standards for waterproofing. So we know whether their waterproofing is legitimate, and you're going to have more confidence that you're not going to get a leak 6 months from now or 2 years from now, but rather you're using the quality ladder grade hydroband that is going to last for decades. So it, to be totally honest, is not 100% a perfect system. This is construction at the end of the day, and there's always going to be unexpected things that come up, field conditions and whatnot. But we think this is at least a better way than the status quo.
Absolutely. So JM wanted to know, and maybe this is also something that you take care of too, but how do you make sure the specs are detailed enough to avoid disagreement later? So for example, the tile sample is a little darker than what was shipped, or one tradesperson blames another, like a toilet's leaking and the plumber blames the toilet parts, the manufacturer blames the plumber. How do you try to avoid that? And
it's a tricky thing, because often it feels like the designer and the contractor are on opposite teams, and that's where the finger pointing starts. That's a dynamic you kind of want to avoid. Within the block context, they are on the same team. They're all sort of working as part of the block platform, the block network, and they've worked with each other across multiple projects before. So like, Kathy and Joseph have been paired up with block clients 14 times, so they have a good dynamic. Whereas if you're hiring your own designer and you're hiring your own contractor, and you want to reduce the likelihood or reduce the propensity for them to blame each other, it's almost like you got to have a family meeting at the beginning and say, hey, we're all got to be on the same page here. Going to start from a position of good faith, start from a position of, hey, we're all problem solve, because there will be moments where there are disputes, and in those events of disputes, you want everyone to be acting in good faith. So if the designer made a mistake in the design, and you want them to own up to it, say, hey, this is my bad, and not point the finger at the contractor and say, hey, they just installed it wrong, or they just built it wrong. Or if the contractor makes a mistake, you don't want them to say, hey, the designer didn't call out that you needed waterproofing here, so I just didn't do it. right? It's like, no, as any good acting contractor, you should know the best practice is to waterproof this wall. So you don't need the designer necessarily to say it. And if you weren't sure, ask the designer. Don't just do the work and then not care about the consequences. You gotta check. So I think it's really important to make sure that there is almost like a friendly and collegial and good faith dynamic with
Mhm.
all the parties involved in your renovation.
Absolutely. What is the workmanship warranty? Laura wanted to know. Is that something you get in writing? I would assume.
Yes, correct. You get a workmanship warranty in writing, and typically it says something like, "Hey, any sort of workmanship issues or construction related issues that come up in the next, let's say, 365 days or 12 months or whatever, I will come and fix it for you." Um, that's different, by the way, from materials warranties. So if the vanity was installed poorly, for example, and it's it starts to lean after a couple months in, that's a workmanship issue.
Mm,
But if the toilet is not working for some reason, that could be a workmanship issue, and maybe they did the plumbing wrong. But it could also just be a Kohler issue, and so the toilet itself might be defective for some reason. Um, your materials vendors, the suppliers, will all carry warranties on the materials as well. So Kohler has a warranty, Toto has a warranty. These guys have warranties as well. So these are just two types of warranties to be aware of: the materials warranty and the workmanship warranty.
that's a good point to bring up. Thank you. Jillian wanted to know, is it better to have your general contractor start conversations with subcontractors like plumbers, electricians, or should a client seek that on their own? And is that something that you also help people with?
Yeah, so typically a general contractor will have subcontractors. And these are guys that they typically have worked with for many projects and multiple years. Um, it is unusual to say to a general contractor, hey, I will find the subcontractor for you instead. So I'm going to go find a plumber, or I'm going to find an electrician. Um, they may increase their rate. The contractor may increase their rate as a result of it. He's like, hey, I don't know that guy's work, and his work is going to be touching my work. So just to play it safe, I'm going to increase my rate because of the risk involved. Whereas if they're bringing their own subcontractors, usually I trust the person and blah blah blah, and they don't have to price in that risk. In the block case, all of our contractors also bring their subcontractors. They have their own network of subcontractors that are bringing on board. If you need a licensed plumber or if you need a licensed electrician to do any of the specialized work.
I guess it also speaks to the team approach, that you want your people knowing each other and working well together, because that's probably a big part of it too.
Yeah, for sure. You need, like, trust is such an important thing. This is a high stakes, high dollar value investment, and takes a lot of time as well. So you've got to create an environment of trust there. Otherwise, as soon as things go poorly, there's going to be dispute, and it's not good for anyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell us, we could talk about contractors all day, I know. But what's step number two?
Yeah, so protect yourself with a contract. So there's multiple elements to a contract. If you go on the Department of Consumer Affairs for the state of New York, there is a standard home improvement contract on there. That's the version that we use. It's like the one that's recommended by the state that has protections for the homeowner. In a contract, you want to have a few things, right? You want to have a clear scope of work. You want to make sure that everyone's on the same page of what exactly this renovation includes. So you're going to be, you got to have demolition, you got to have tiling, you've got to have finishes, you got to have fixtures, but you also want to have the stuff that goes behind the wall. You want to have carpentry included, plumbing included, electric work included. So you've got to make sure that scope of work is pretty thorough and pretty airtight. Otherwise, you're opening yourself up for change orders in which you assign the scope of work with the contractor, and then 2 weeks into projects, he or she says, hey, we got to do this plumbing work. And you're like, and it's going to be $2,000, and you're saying, wait, where does that come from? It's like, well, you just got to do the plumbing work, and it's not in the scope of work, so it's going to be additional. So it's a change order. So you've got to know that in advance, so that, and a lot of people are not sure what they should know to put in there, which is why we have a standard scope of work that has all these included to make sure that there's, protection for the homeowner. Scope of work is one of the probably most important things to have in that contract. You want to have some sort of cancellation clause as well. You want to make sure that the contractor's carrying insurance in there as well. But if you take a look at some of the standard home improvement contract provided by the New York State, you'll see some of those clauses in there.
And is that something Block Renovation helps you with as well, with the contract?
Yeah, we have a standard contract and legal framework for the homeowner and the contractor to agree on. So we want to make sure everyone's on the same page. There are protections for the homeowner in there. A lot of contractors, they sort of cowboy it and they have their own contract and say, here, use this. Typically don't recommend that because it doesn't have the homeowner protections that you need, and you might find yourself with your back against the wall at some point because the contractor made up their own contract. So you want to have one that kind of protects you.
All right, so now I feel like we need like a drum roll. We're down to the number one step. Would you share that with us?
Yeah, this one is sort of a sum of everything that we've talked about. Right? At the end of the day, you want to work with good, experienced, trusted partners throughout your whole project. If you're working with experienced partner because you worked with them before, that's great. Or experienced or trusted partner because your neighbor knows them really well, that's great. Or your friend knows them really well, that's great. But that experience and that trust is most important at the end of the day. For people who don't have a super trusted contractor because their family member knows one or is one, or their neighbor knows one or is one, that's where Block comes in. We try to provide that more trusting environment where we've helped you bring together your designer partner, your contractor partner, the materials, and package it in a way that works for everyone. This is so important. This is too expensive and too high stakes a thing to approach it in a sort of a, with any shortcuts or approach it with a cavalier way. You want to make sure you're really thoughtful and you're really thorough about doing it.
I did share your website in the chat, and it'll go out in the email as well. So but Koda, can you tell us if someone's interested in working with you, what would be the first step and what would they expect?
Yeah, for sure. If you go to our site, you can book an appointment with one of our project planners. So our project planners, renovation consultants, they'll hear you out. It's like, hey, I've got to just let them know what you want to do. It's like, I've got this kind of bathroom or this kind of kitchen. I live here and it's on the second floor of this building, or it's on the first floor of my, thing. I want to do this. Just talk about your project. Let our team know. And, they're very well versed. They talk to hundreds of folks every month about what they have in mind. We have and then from there, they're going to help you plan the project out, what's the scope of work, and then introduce you to everything the Block platform offers. So whether it's the contracting and / agreement, the designer, the procurement, the contractor, they'll help you package that all together and say, hey, here's my game plan for how I'm going to do a renovation. This is what it's going to look like. It's how much it's going to cost. This is who I'm going to work with. This is how long it's going to take. Then you have all the pieces together, and then you can feel more comfortable moving forward with it. So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. And we hope that it gives people at least more of a peace of mind in approaching their renovations. Renovations, just to be totally transparent, are still hard. It's still basically performing surgery on your house. And so it's not like, I'm going to use
great analogy. That's a great analogy.
It's not like I'm using my, Grubhub or DoorDash app and ordering food and bam, 15 minutes later, it's there. Just to be totally transparent with expectations, this is still a hard thing. So we're just trying to make a hard thing less hard.
And you give the expertise. Because I think, the scary thing is, and you said it's step number one with, HGTV, people thinking they can do it all, is that it is like a surgery, and you wouldn't go in and give yourself a surgery. So all those steps, it's like, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's the thing that tricks people up so much. We have a bunch of questions that I would love to ask you, if that's okay.
Sure, sure.
Wonderful. So Shari wants to know, how costly can adding a vent to the bathroom be? Is that a big project?
It depends whether you're replacing one that's already there, or you're adding a new one. If you're replacing one that's already there, super cheap. It's a low three-digit number to get there. But if you're adding a new one, first you have to verify whether you can do it and where it goes. So that can vary quite a bit. It can be in the hundreds, or it can be in the thousands. It sort of highly depends on the existing conditions of the home.
Great.
Or of the building, for that matter.
Thank you. Martin wants to convert his bathtub to a shower stall with a seat. Will this require major plumbing work?
The tub to shower conversion, if you do not move the location, does not require major plumbing work. The one plumbing thing you may have to do is increase the size of the drain. So typically the drains for tubs are smaller than drains for showers. So when you convert a tub to a shower, your drain needs to be larger because you need water to flow through more quickly. Otherwise, the shower will overflow. Right? If you have a bathtub, the bathtub's like 12 inches or 14 inches off the ground, the drain can be whatever that size is because it looks like it overflow. Whereas if you have a 2 or 3 inch curb for your walk-in shower, or if it's a curbless shower, you're going to need a bigger and wider drain so that the water doesn't overflow to the rest of your bathroom.
That makes sense. Justin wanted to know on this plumbing track, is it just as costly to remove plumbing, like changing a 4-family to a 2-family and removing kitchens, as it is to change or add? Is that just as expensive, the kind of the removal of plumbing?
Removing it actually is not expensive. So if you just want to cap off, like let's say you have a double van. I'll give you a really simple example. You have a double vanity, kind of like in this picture on the right. You want a double vanity, and you want to make it to a single vanity, which means you got to cap off one of the plumbing fixtures, one of the faucets. That's easy to do. What's more expensive is changing the location or adding a plumbing. Changing your location or adding plumbing will be a 4-digit number, whereas just capping it off will be a low 3-digit number.
Great, that's great to know. Kathy wants to know, can I use your services for the design phase only?
For now, we don't offer that. What we can do though is if someone just wants to work with design, we can refer you to a designer in our network, and you say, hey, you feel free to work with them. It's no water off our backs. It's like not a big deal. We're happy to do a referral. But our sweet spot is the full renovation. So you want to come in, let's do a full bathroom, let's do a kitchen, and we'll help you plan it out end to end.
Terrific. Eric wants to know, he wants to move his kitchen from the garden level to the parlor level, and he understands it isn't a simple project, but would love to get your thoughts. The room we want to move it to is directly above the current kitchen. Obviously, this is something that would be nice for you to have a longer conversation with Eric about, but perhaps there's something quick you could share with us?
Yeah, I think I definitely recommend that you get in touch with our project planners about it. They can advise you on what that would cost without seeing a layout or seeing the kitchen itself. It's hard to say. I can say though that if you're maintaining plumbing on the same stack, as in if the sink on the first floor is going to be in the same place as the sink on the second floor, that is more feasible than if you wanted to change the location that's away from the stack in the wall. So it highly depends on what the current circumstances are. It sounds like it could be feasible. However, it will probably be quite expensive, especially if you are going to be moving gas.
So very important to work with people that you can trust. This is going to be a big project.
Yeah, this is something we can any of these questions also you can consult with our project planning team on. So if you go to our website, just fill in your information, you'll get a call, or you can set an appointment with one of our project planners, and you can basically say, hey, this is what I have in mind. What do you think? And they'll give you both a answer of, hey, here's how much it could potentially cost, but also give you advice of, hey, is this really worth the worth it from an ROI perspective. If you want to move your tub 3 inches, they'll say, hey, that's probably not worth it. You're going to spend, $3,000 and just to get 3 inches, probably not worth it. So they'll give you advice in that way, because they are not the contractor, right? We're not the contractor. We're helping you plan out your work with your designer, with your contractor. But because we're not the contractor ourselves, we try to give the best advice as we can, just speaking from a neutral position.
Wow, thank you, Koda. Honestly, I could talk with you all day. You have the most greatest advice and really has given a lot. Please, could you review? This is wonderful. Review all the steps with our.
Yeah, here we are. It's like you got to make sure these are basically each step of the renovation process: expectations, budget, cost, inspiration, having a good idea of what it's going to look like, material schedule, procurement. That is harder than you think. Vetting your contractor, making sure you have a great contract, and working with experienced and trusted partners.
Fantastic. I did put the website blockrenovation.com in the chat. So if you want to get in touch with Koda and his team, you can reach out. Obviously, they have tremendous experience and certainly a great way to be able to make things easier, although not easy, because it's not easy process.
It's not easy.
But even still, these tips have been incredibly valuable and important, no matter how people decide to move forward with their renovations.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you for the time. Oh, by the way, my marketing team is nudging me to mention that they're running a limited time $3,000 discount that our contractors will honor for the time being. So want to make that available and make sure that folks are aware of it. But otherwise, like, if you have any questions and whatnot, feel free to ping us. You can go to our site, blockrenovation.com, and happy to get you started.
Wow, thank you for offering our attendees $3,000. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And Koda, thank you so much for being with us today. You're so knowledgeable. You've given us such great tips. Thank you so much to our attendees for joining us this morning / into the afternoon. I wish you all to stay safe and stay healthy. I do want you to know, though, because people are asking, this recording will be available on the Schneps Media YouTube channel. You will get an email tomorrow with Block Renovation information, as well as where to go to be able to see the video. So if you want to be able to see this again and review these tips, and also share it with your friends in your community, you certainly can do so. Again, thank you for being here. Wishing you a wonderful day and a fabulous weekend, and take good care. I'll see you at our next webinar. Bye-bye.